She who never lost forfeited the moment. This human entered the arena. The Dravari Colosseum thrummed with the fever of combat, its polished stone floors slick with the memory of countless battles. Overhead, banners snapped in the currents from the thermal vents, casting shifting patterns on the crowd's upturned faces. From his post in the control suite, Marcus kept his gaze trained on the holographic readouts, his fingers moving in disciplined precision over the glowing interface. The deafening roar of the audience below barely reached him, only a distant, hungry vibration in his chest. Down in the arena, Naira moved with predatory precision. Her dark gray fur caught the flare of the stadium lights, shifting in waves beneath the obsidian shimmering armor that clung to her form. She was the Syndicate's unchallenged Vishari champion, every step calculated, her pointed ears flicking at every surge of the crowd's adoration. When her opponent lunged, she slipped aside with feline grace, catching his weapon on the arc of her gauntlet. The impact sent a peal of sparks across the stone, but her obsidian eyes remained cool, untouched by either the violence or the fevered chanting that echoed off the vaulted ceilings. Marcus found himself watching her longer than was strictly necessary for his role. His job was to monitor the systems, field integrity, neural feedback, automated medic alerts, mundane, methodical. Yet he tracked her movements with a secret fascination, cataloging every microsecond of her responses as if he might someday decipher the code behind her effortless skill. A sharp chime broke his reverie. His screen flashed a rare directive, summons to the Vishari champion's quarters. He hesitated. Such an order was fraught with risk for someone of his rank. But protocol was uncompromising. He followed the labyrinthine corridors behind the combatant staging halls, passing through security checkpoints where guards eyed him with disinterest or suspicion. Naira's quarters lay deep within the complex, insulated from the cacophony of the Colosseum. The door slid open at his approach, revealing a chamber of shadowed calm. Here, the air was thick with a wild metallic scent, as if the energy of the arena had been distilled and tamed. Naira stood by a viewport, the city's fractured lights painting sharp angles across her features. Her battle gear was gone, replaced by a simple charcoal robe that draped from her shoulders and left the formidable lines of her physique evident. She didn't turn. "The neural feedback grid in the training hall is unstable," she said, her voice a velvet growl that resonated in his bones. He nodded, setting his tools on the low table beside the console. As he knelt, she stepped closer, her presence looming behind him. He could feel the heat of her body, the subtle electric charge that seemed to ripple from her as she watched his hands. Marcus worked in silence, fingers tracing the braided leads of the feedback grid. The system was more complex than most realized, a living web of conductive fibers and crystalline relays. His every motion was measured, precise, but he could not ignore the subtle tension in the air. Her silhouette fell over his hands, a living shadow. When he risked a glance up, he caught the tightness in her jaw, the unreadable depth in her gaze. "You always work this quietly?" she asked, her tone probing. He forced a smile. "Better for the circuits. They're temperamental, especially after a match." She said nothing, but her eyes never left him. He finished the diagnostics, fingers brushing over the interface as he initiated a reset. Their encounters multiplied after that night. There was always another system to tune, a flicker in the hollow arena, a recalibration needed in the environmental fields. Each task became a pretext, an unspoken invitation for Marcus to linger in her orbit. Sometimes she watched him work in silence, arms folded across her chest. Other times, she prowled the room with restless energy, her questions sharp and unexpected. One late evening, he found himself in the blue-lit simulator, adjusting the neural relay with Naira standing impossibly close behind him. The chamber was tight, panels humming with potential. His hand hovered near hers as they traced the same circuit diagram. There's a 2.8 millisecond lag in the neural relay, he murmured, voice steady despite the proximity. In a real match, that's the margin between a block and a mortal wound, she finished, her back grazing his chest. The brief contact sent a shock through him, hot and startling, nothing to do with the circuits. He caught her looking at him, her gaze appraising, as if she could see straight through the layers he wore. Something shifted between them, the boundary that had been rigid beginning to blur. One evening, while the simulacrum skies cycled through an artificial dusk, she leaned against the viewport, her eyes fixed on the city below. "Tell me about Terra," she said, the curiosity in her voice softer, more genuine than he'd ever heard. He hesitated, feeling the old reflex to dodge. "There's not much to tell. It's crowded, loud. Everything smells of rain and dust." She studied him, her gaze sharp and unwavering. "That's not all." He met her eyes, the tension between them taut and electric. For a moment, the carefully maintained walls around him seemed paper-thin. Marcus, meant to be invisible, found himself exposed in her presence. The Colosseum's distant roar faded, replaced by the hush of possibilities neither dared name. Marcus's chance arrived under the guise of a facility-wide tech overhaul. The announcement swept through the Colosseum like a cleansing fire, promising nothing more than updated firmware and smoother combat feeds. But beneath the surface, tension hummed, an undercurrent only a few could sense. While his colleagues shuffled between maintenance relays and dull diagnostic screens, Marcus moved with quiet intent, sliding past the checkpoints that mattered, blending into the humdrum of routine. He waited until the surveillance sweep rotated away, then slipped through a maintenance hatch into the restricted wing. The deeper he went, the colder the air felt, and the more silence pressed in. In a dim alcove behind the main server room, he found Tyrak's encrypted systems, a nest of cables and hardened data cores pulsing with blue light. He exhaled, forced steady hands, and set to work. A tangle of code guarded every entry. He bypassed security layers one by one, heart pounding as he skirted digital tripwires. Lines of encrypted text flickered across his visor. Marcus's breath caught when he found the hidden partition, a dossier of undercover Union operatives, cross-referenced with deployment logs, infiltration records, and payment trails, enough to bring Tyrak's entire empire to its knees. He reached for the data extraction drive, eyes darting between progress bars. The files transferred, slow as honey in winter. Marcus's mind raced ahead to what came next. A covert relay to the Union, a signal to end this rain of blood. But then, a shrill alarm shredded the silence. Red lights stuttered to life overhead. His screen blurred with intrusion warnings. Footsteps thundered down the corridor, dozens of boots. He yanked the drive, slammed the panel closed, and ducked behind the servers. Guards burst in, pulse batons raised. Marcus lunged for the exit, but a baton clipped his shoulder, spinning him to the ground. "Don't move!" barked a voice. He fought back, fists swinging, but he was outnumbered. Someone seized his collar, slammed him against cold metal. Pain flared as a baton struck his temple, then darkness crashed over him, thick and merciless. He came to in the audience hall, blinking against harsh overhead lights. The scent of incense and sweat burned in his nostrils. He knelt, wrists bound, before a dais where Tyrak sat, regal and monstrous, his smile thin as a blade. "A traitor," Tyrak announced, his voice carrying to the high balconies. "He will die as an example." He leaned forward, eyes glittering. "In the arena, by the champion's hand." A ripple of excitement coursed through the audience, hungry for spectacle. Marcus's stomach twisted. He caught a glimpse of Naira standing at the foot of the dais, her face carved from stone, eyes empty as obsidian. Tyrak gestured to her. "Prepare yourself. Let no one mistake mercy for weakness." Naira's expression did not flicker. She bowed her head in icy compliance, a perfect mask. Only when she turned, slipping into the corridor beyond, did her facade fracture. In her preparation suite, alone, the silence pressed in like a storm, rage welled up, hot, wild, impossible to contain. She drove her fist into a metal bench, the impact ringing out as the steel bent under her hand. The pain was nothing. She stared at her reflection in the dark glass, not a victor, but a caged predator. Her claws flexed involuntarily, forced to destroy the only person who had ever truly seen her. On the day of execution, the Colosseum was a cauldron of anticipation. The stands overflowed, banners snapping in the updraft. Marcus was shoved through the arched gateway into blinding light. The world shrank to a circle of sand, the roar of the crowd, and the iron bite of the restraints at his wrists. Across the arena, Nera emerged in full ceremonial armor, obsidian plates catching the sunlight in prismatic flares. Her helm glinted, casting her face in shadow. The crowd surged to its feet, chanting for blood, her name, his death. Marcus swallowed hard, feeling every eye on him. He tried to stand tall, but his legs trembled. Nera approached, swords drawn, each step deliberate. The sunlight painted cruel edges across her armor. She stopped within striking distance, blades poised. The crowd hushed, breath held. But instead of attacking, Nera let both blades fall, the clang echoing across the arena. She turned her back to him, arms wide, a gesture of defiance broadcast to every camera, every watching system across the stars. For a heartbeat, the world stood still. Then the uproar began. Tyrax enforcers surged forward, weapons raised. Loyalists in the stands leapt the barricades, chaos exploding in waves of violence. Blaster fire stitched the air. Nera spun, slashing Marcus's restraints with a single swipe. The cords fell away. She seized his arm, voice low and urgent. "Stay close." They plunged into the fray, weaving between brawling guards and panicked spectators. Nera moved like a shadow, carving a path with efficient, brutal strikes. Marcus ducked as a baton swung past his head, grabbing Nera's shoulder to steady himself. "Why risk this?" he yelled over the din. She whirled, pinning him against a stone wall. Her body pressed to his, armor cold against his chest. Her eyes blazed, wild with anger and something deeper. "I recognized you from the start," she snapped, breath hot at his ear. "I intended to use your escape as my own. Your capture ruined everything. This wasn't the plan." For a moment, their faces hovered inches apart, chaos swirling around them. Nera's grip tightened, not in threat, but as if she needed the contact to steady herself. The crowd's screams, the pulse of blasters, the crackle of energy fields, all faded behind the words that hung between them, raw and honest, cutting through everything else. She let him go with a shove. "Move!" The command was sharp, her resolve unbroken, but Marcus saw the fracture lines beneath. He followed, heart pounding, as they dove once more into the chaos, two fugitives tethered by betrayal and something that felt dangerously close to hope. Fugitives in the neon labyrinth of the outer warrens, their roles reversed. Marcus moved with a confidence he'd never shown in the Colosseum's shadowed halls, shoulders squared and eyes scanning every alley and glowing sign. Now it was Nera who followed, one step behind and to the side, her senses sharp and her hand never far from the daggers strapped beneath her battered jacket. The world outside the arena was a shifting mosaic of danger, but here Marcus was in his element. Tyrax bounty posters glared from every street corner, flickering on rust-stained hollow boards and pasted over noodle stalls. Marcus's features, sullen and grainy, looped in endless rotation beside a stylized sketch of Nera's obsidian eyes, a reward large enough to make even the most loyal think twice. Nera's ears were flat, jaw tight with the tension of being hunted, but Marcus moved with purpose, ducking into side passages, guiding her through crowds with the certainty of a man who'd spent years disappearing into places like these. He led her through a network of forgotten maintenance tunnels, up through a market pulsing with color and noise. Vendors hawked steaming bao, synth fruit, and black market tech. The air was thick with the scent of oil, ozone, and fried spices. Naira stalked at his side, gaze always moving, her hand brushing the hilt of her dagger each time a stranger drew near. Then, in a breath, everything shifted. A trio of figures peeled away from a stall, moving with the practiced casualness of killers. Marcus saw the glint of a concealed weapon and hissed, "Down!" Too late. A flashbang burst, painting the world white. Naira reacted first. She shoved Marcus behind a crate, obsidian daggers flashing as she intercepted the first attacker. Steel rang, voices shouted, and the crowd scattered in a panicked wave. Marcus, vision swimming, scrambled to his feet and dove for a fuse box embedded in a pillar. His fingers flew, bypassing the lockouts with muscle memory born of desperation. The market plunged into darkness. Generators whined. Neon signs flickered and died. Shouts echoed in the sudden gloom. Naira dispatched her last opponent with ruthless efficiency, then grabbed Marcus's wrist. He tugged her sideways, ducking through the confusion, weaving between overturned stalls and stumbling vendors. They ran, hearts pounding, until the chaos faded behind them. In the shadow of an automated freight yard, Marcus cracked the seal on a shipping container marked for the frontier and waved her inside. The air was cold and metallic, darkness absolute when the door slid shut behind them. For a long moment, only the sound of their breathing filled the space. Then Marcus reached out, fingers brushing fur and armor. He found her trembling, energy coiled beneath her skin. "Are you hurt?" he whispered, voice raw with fear and relief. "No," she breathed. She caught his hand and held it tight, the last of her restraint dissolving. Weeks of tension, adrenaline, and unsaid words erupted between them. Naira pulled him close, her kiss fierce and urgent, a clash of need and relief that stole the air from his lungs. She was stronger, her hands pinned him, her body pressing him to the cold wall. But then she softened, enfolding him, drawing him close until nothing else mattered but the heat of their bodies and the wild, shuddering relief of survival. Later, the container shuddered to life and rattled across the city's underbelly. They lay tangled together in the dark, the world outside reduced to the steady drone of engines. When the container finally stopped, Marcus led them into the drizzle and found shelter in a cramped safe house above a ramen stall, the air thick with steam and the scent of broth. The mood was quieter, heavier. Marcus sat on the edge of the narrow cot, fingers twisting in the fabric of his borrowed shirt. "A pawn," he said, voice low, not accusing but wounded. "That's all I was." Naira sat across from him, cleaning her blades with slow, methodical strokes. "At first, yes. You were my key to freedom." She paused, the cloth stilling in her hand. "But I didn't forfeit for a tool, Marcus. I did it for you." He looked up, searching her face for the lie and finding none. He reached across the gap and took her hand, their fingers entwining awkwardly, honestly. For the first time, they were simply two souls, no champion, no engineer, stripped of pretense, facing the unknown together. But peace in the outer warrens was fleeting. The coded knock came after midnight, 3 sharp raps, then 2 more. Union code. Marcus's blood turned to ice. Naira's hand went to her blade. The door slid open. Cell entered first, flanked by Union Special Ops in matte black armor, weapons ready. Cell's expression was unreadable. "Marcus," Cell said, voice cool. "You're a hard man to find. You know what the Union thinks?" Marcus stepped in front of Naira, heart pounding. "They think I've defected." He glanced at Cell's team, their weapons aimed not at Naira, but at him. "They're not here to negotiate." Naira tensed, every muscle coiled for violence. Marcus shot her a look, a silent plea. Don't kill them. Marcus, Sel warned. Hand her over. Stand down. No, Marcus said, voice steady. We're leaving. Sel's team advanced. Naira's claws flashed, but Marcus caught her arm. Ventilation shafts, he whispered. She hesitated, then nodded, trusting him. They ducked into the narrow crawl space behind the cot. Boots thundered after them, shouts echoing down the shaft. Marcus led the way, mapping the safe house vents in his head. They emerged onto a rain-soaked rooftop, neon flickering across puddles. Marcus pressed his back to the wall, breath coming in ragged bursts. We need to overload the power grid, hit them with an EMP, freeze their gear. It's the only shot. Nira nodded, eyes fierce in the rain. I'll draw them, make it count. She vaulted the barrier, moving with silent precision. Sel's team spilled onto the rooftop, weapons sweeping. Nira darted between cover, blades gleaming, drawing fire away from Marcus as he scrambled to the relay panel. His hands worked in a blur, bypassing fail-safes, rerouting surge lines, fingers slipping on wet circuits. The city's lights flickered, then died. A pulse of blue-white energy rolled across the rooftop. The Union squad froze mid-stride, exosuits sparking. Nira appeared at his side, breathless, adrenaline sparking between them. Now, Marcus hissed. They slipped away into the maze of rooftops, rain washing the last traces of their presence into the gutters below, evading both Syndicate and Union. Together, fugitives in a city that wanted them both erased. Hidden in the bowels of a derelict cargo ship, Marcus sat hunched over a battered datapad, the blue glow painting sharp planes across his face. The stolen files filled the screen, page after page of damning evidence, payoffs, shipment logs, lists of disappeared names. Shadows flickered across the rusted walls, the low hum of the ship's forgotten engines their only company. Naira leaned against a crate, arms folded, eyes unreadable in the half-light. We can't keep running, Marcus said, voice barely above a whisper. Tyrak's network spans the galaxy. As long as he's out there, there's nowhere we can disappear. Naira watched him, silent but listening, her tail twitching with restrained tension. He looked up, jaw set. There's only one way out. We go to Veyron, Tyrak's stronghold. We get inside and broadcast the files to every channel, every system. Expose the Syndicate, all of it. No more shadows. For a long moment, Naira said nothing. Then she stepped out of the darkness, her form a silhouette against the fading glow of a distant star through a cracked viewport. That fortress is a graveyard for ghosts and legends, Marcus. No one gets in. We can, he insisted, determination hardening his words. I know the tech, the grid, every blind spot in their surveillance. I've been studying Veyron since the day I arrived. With your skills, she cut him off with a tilt of her head. With my claws, my blades. Her mouth quirked, the faintest hint of a smile. And your mind. He nodded, shoulders relaxing just a fraction. We work together. Infiltration at orbital dusk, cargo ingress. I'll disable their security nodes, patch our signal to the broadcast relays. You'll handle the patrols. We don't stop unless we're at the core. Naira moved closer, studying his face. And if we fail? He hesitated. Then at least the fight will be on our terms. Their plan unfolded over the next hours, voices low and urgent. Marcus laid out the fortress's schematics with a surgeon's precision, mapping sensor dead zones and hidden maintenance hatches. Naira tested the balance of her daggers, eyes glinting with anticipation. Trust grew, silent and steady, forged in the pressure of desperation and hope. That night, rare calm settled over the battered cargo bay. The storm of fear and adrenaline had ebbed, replaced by the hush before a leap. Naira stood by the viewport, arms wrapped around herself, gaze lost among the wheeling stars. Marcus approached quietly, the echo of his boots soft against the metal. He slipped his arms around her waist, pulling her gently against him. She leaned back, head resting on his shoulder, her obsidian eyes reflecting the cosmos. "Are you afraid?" Marcus asked, voice soft, lips grazing the edge of her ear. She closed her eyes, a slow breath escaping. "Fear is always there," she murmured, "but with you, it is quiet." He held her tighter, their heartbeats finding a shared rhythm in the stillness. Naira turned, cupping his face in her hands. "If we succeed, it will be the first time I fight for myself." Her voice trembled, fierce and vulnerable. "For us." He brushed his lips to hers, a kiss slow and sure, the promise of tomorrow woven into the silence. They held each other, anchored in hope. When the time came, they slipped from the cargo ship into the cold, thin air of Veyron's outer docks. The fortress loomed above, a spire of black glass and alloy, bristling with weapon arrays and surveillance drones. Marcus led the way, hunched beneath the shroud of a maintenance crew's stolen uniforms, his mind running through the plan like a litany. He accessed a security terminal, fingers moving in a blur. "Give me 60 seconds," he whispered. The feed flickered, then dropped. The cameras went dark. Naira was a shadow beside him, eyes narrowed. "2 sentries, west alcove." "I'll get the door," Marcus replied. She slipped away, silent as vapor. There was a muffled scuffle, and 2 bodies slid into the shadows. Naira returned, blades already cleaned. They pressed on, deeper into the heart of Veyron. Their teamwork was seamless, a dance honed by trust and shared scars. Marcus disabled motion sensors. Naira dispatched patrols with swift surgical strikes. At the data core, the fortress's beating heart, Marcus crouched over the console, sweat slicking his brow. "Cover me," he said, voice tight. Naira took position by the door, daggers poised, every muscle coiled for violence. "Hurry!" Marcus's hands flew across the controls, decrypting, uploading, patching the files to every public channel. Progress bars crawled across the display. Alarms started to wail, a shrill, keening warning. Naira tensed. "We have company!" The doors exploded inward. Tyrak strode in, clad in a powered exosuit, metal plates rippling with kinetic shields. His face was a mask of rage, eyes wild as his empire collapsed in real time on the holoscreens behind him. "Traitors!" he snarled, voice amplified, echoing off the walls. "You think this ends me? I built this world!" He lunged at Marcus, who dove behind the console. Naira met Tyrak head-on, moving with impossible speed. Her agility and cunning met his brute force, daggers scoring the armor, Tyrak's gauntlets smashing consoles and flooring. Sparks flew, data screens shattered. "Marcus!" Naira shouted, dodging a blow that left a crater in the floor. Marcus scanned the controls, brain racing. "Get him to the coolant ducts!" he yelled. Naira feinted left, drawing Tyrak into position. Marcus triggered a burst. The pipes ruptured, hissing cold vapor across the chamber. Tyrak's suit froze, servos locking up with a tortured whine. "Now!" Marcus called. Naira leapt, blades flashing in the mist. She drove them through the exosuit's visor, ending Tyrak's reign with a single, decisive blow. The warlord slumped, his empire dying as the files streamed out to every screen in the galaxy. Moments later, Union troops stormed the chamber, weapons raised. Marcus stood, hands raised, breathless. Cell appeared, face grim, but nodded once. "You're clear, Marcus." "And her? She's granted sanctuary." The Union saw everything. Naira wiped her blades, exhaling slowly. Around them, alarms faded, replaced by the hum of new order. The Syndicate, decapitated and exposed, crumbled beneath the weight of its own secrets. Later, on the bridge of a small courier ship gifted by the Union, Naira stood with Marcus at the viewport, the stars stretching wide and endless before them. She leaned into his embrace, his arms around her waist. The weight of her old life finally, miraculously, lifted. They drifted for months along forgotten trade routes, their ship tracing invisible lines across the starfields, leaving only silence in their wake. The galaxy's noise receded behind them, alarms and chases replaced by the patient, unhurried rhythm of daily survival. Eventually, they found Lyria, a tranquil, unclaimed world tucked far from old warpaths, its gentle blue skies unmarred by satellites or searchlights. On a morning pale with mist, Marcus stood on the porch of their modest home, cup warm in his hands, watching Naira at the lake's edge. Her daggers were set aside atop a flat stone, their obsidian gleam dulled in the soft light. She crouched barefoot by the water, examining a river stone with the same intense focus she had once reserved for battle. He watched her, marveling at the transformation, a warrior learning gentleness, hands that had ended lives now tracing the lines and curves of a simple stone. Naira rolled the pebble in her palm, the water lapping quietly against her ankles. She seemed suspended between worlds, part of the wild, part of him, and something wholly new. Marcus smiled, turning as the screen door creaked open behind him. Inside, the air filled with the comforting aroma of his cooking. Marcus moved around the kitchen with practiced grace, chopping local tubers and leafy greens, adapting a Terran recipe to the fragrant, alien herbs he had gathered the day before. The act soothed him, each step familiar, grounding. He heard Naira's quiet footsteps at the threshold. She lingered, watching him with open curiosity. "You measure everything," she observed, head tilted, ears perked. "Why not just taste as you go?" He grinned, glancing over his shoulder. "Because the first time, I used too much salt. The whole kitchen smelled like the inside of an old spacesuit." Her mouth twitched, amusement glittering in her dark eyes. "Cooking is ritual for you." He set aside the knife, meeting her gaze. "It's memory, home, a way to shape the day. On Terra, we gather to eat, to share what we've made. I guess it helps me remember who I am." She came closer, hands folded behind her back. "And if you had nothing to cook?" He shrugged. "Then I'd have to make something new." That evening, as the sun slipped behind the low hills and shadows stretched across the porch, Naira joined him outside. She slid her arms around his waist from behind, chin resting on his shoulder. The quiet between them was full, not empty. "Your thoughts are loud," she murmured, her breath warm against his neck. He covered her hands with his, fingers lacing through hers. "No alarms, no crowds, no secrets." His words carried a kind of awe, as if he still couldn't quite believe it. The lake reflected the first stars, the hush broken only by distant birds and the soft sigh of wind through the grass. She pressed her cheek to his back, silent for a time. When she spoke, her voice was low. "Some days, I wake and think there must be something to fight, a purpose, but I don't know what it is anymore." He turned in her arms, studying her face in the dusk. "Our purpose is this, just being here." He brushed a thumb along her cheek, gentle, steady. "We built something from nothing. That's enough." Naira searched his eyes as if trying to find the lie, and found none. She nodded once, the tension in her shoulders easing. After dinner, when the night air had cooled and the house was bathed in the gold of a single lamp, Naira beckoned him to the open space near the hearth. She knelt, legs folded beneath her, and gestured for him to sit. Marcus obeyed, curiosity flickering in his gaze. "I want to show you something," she said. Her tone was softer than he'd ever heard, reverent. "The first movement of my people's meditative form. For us, it's a way to return to ourselves." She guided his posture, hands gentle but insistent. "Spine straight, shoulders loose. Breathe in with me." Her touch mapped the line of his back, her presence grounding him like gravity. He closed his eyes, following her instructions as she led him through the slow, deliberate motions. Naira's arms encircled him, guiding his own, her fur brushing his skin. There was intimacy in the practice, a trust deeper than desire, a surrender to shared stillness. He felt her low purr vibrate against his back, a sound he had only ever heard in sleep or quiet moments, never shared with anyone but him. She moved with him, breath and pulse in perfect unison. He relaxed into her hold, letting her strength become his own. The weight of old fears, of danger and running, melted away. He turned to face her, eyes meeting hers, and found himself mirrored there, safe, seen. Their kiss was slow, certain, an affirmation not of escape, but of arrival. It was the shape of the quiet life they had built together, a promise kept not with words, but with presence and trust. And in that peace, in the hush of a world finally their own, Marcus and Naira found what they had been searching for all along. Their peace was interrupted by the arrival of an encrypted message. The alert chirped quietly from Marcus's old comms unit, tucked away in a drawer, half forgotten. He found it pulsing with blue light in the soft hush of their bedroom. The lake's reflection dappled across the floorboards. Naira stood by the window, sharpening a kitchen blade with absent care, her movements calm but alert. Always alert, even here. Marcus hesitated, then keyed in the decryption sequence. Cell's voice came through, clipped and direct, familiar even after all these quiet months. Marcus, Naira. The Union Council has issued a full pardon for both of you, effective immediately. Your status is clear, all records sealed. There's more. Marcus glanced at Naira, heart pounding, before switching to the text attachment and reading aloud. Marcus, you're invited to join the Union Academy as a senior analyst. Your work on the Tyrak file has set new standards. Naira, the Union requests your expertise to help develop advanced combat protocols for the next generation of agents. You would have full authority, resources, and independence. Both positions are yours if you accept. He let the message linger in the air, waiting for Naira's reaction. He half expected her to flash with excitement, to seize the opportunity as if it were another challenge to conquer. But she was silent, knife forgotten in her hand, her expression unreadable. Marcus broke the hush, voice uncertain. It's everything we could have hoped for. You'd have a place, real respect. I'd have my work, a way to do good, maybe even a real home. She turned, meeting his gaze with those obsidian eyes that could be so fierce, so gentle. They want to put you in another cage, she said quietly. A softer one, but still a cage. He stared at her, surprised by the steel beneath her words. You don't want this? Naira shrugged, moving to sit beside him at the edge of the bed. She looked down at her hands, flexing her claws as if they still bore the memory of old shackles. They offer me a title. A role I was trained to crave. The champion would have accepted, but I am not just a champion anymore. Marcus felt the question hanging there, heavy and patient. She was waiting for him to answer it, to say, perhaps, that he needed the academy, that his purpose was tied to the Union, to the work he'd always known. For a moment, he let himself imagine it. The bright halls, the security, the endless puzzle of new systems and secrets. Yet the image dissolved when he looked at Naira, at the slant of her smile, the way the morning light gilded her hair. She spoke again, softer now. What do you want, Marcus? Not what you're supposed to want. What is it you choose? He felt the answer bloom inside him, quiet and clear. He took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. I thought I'd lost my life when I lost the Union, but it's here, with you, with this. He gestured around the little house, to the battered mugs, the rumpled blankets, the garden outside, evidence of a life built from nothing but hope and stubbornness. Her touch was gentle as she framed his face, claws retracted, hands warm and steady. What Tyrak and the Union never understood, she murmured, is that a human's greatest strength isn't cunning. It's the ability to build, to make a home where there was none. She pressed her forehead to his, a Vishari sign of trust, and he closed his eyes, letting himself lean into her. He smiled, the tension draining from his body. And what about you? If we say no, if we let this pass, do you regret it? She shook her head, a slow, sure movement. No, because I choose it, freely. For the first time, the choice is mine. The offer remained unanswered, Cell's words quietly blinking in the message queue, but neither of them reached for it again. They left the comms unit on the table, a relic of old lives, its blue light fading as the sun climbed higher. That night, Marcus cooked their dinner with special care, slicing vegetables thin as paper and coaxing flavors from the local grains. Naira sat nearby, feet tucked beneath her, watching the play of his hands with a small, private smile. She interrupted him only once, stealing a taste from the pot, laughter rumbling low in her chest. Afterwards, they walked down to the lakeshore, the air warm and fragrant with the scent of flowering reeds. Marcus carried a blanket, spreading it across the sand. Naira lay beside him, her head on his shoulder, her tail curled around his ankle. The sky slowly shifted from violet to gold, the first rays of dawn glinting on the ripples. They sat in silence for a long time, hands entwined. It was not the hush of exhaustion or fear, but a silence ripe with possibility, with a future chosen freely. Nira broke the quiet at last. We survived empires, betrayals. We survived ourselves. Marcus squeezed her hand, his thumb tracing the back of her palm. We did. She tilted her face up, studying him in the newborn light. And now? Now, he whispered. We live. That's our victory. She smiled, a real, unguarded smile, her eyes softer than he'd ever seen. Together. The sun rose fully, painting them in liquid gold. Their shadows stretched over the water, side by side, and Marcus closed his eyes, letting the warmth wash over him. This was not an ending, but a beginning. A future chosen freely, together. That's the end of the story. You can leave us a tip or become a channel member. This greatly helps our team improve the quality of our videos. You can send a tip using the Super Thanks button right below the video. We truly appreciate each and every one of you who has subscribed and supported us. Please do not forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and write in the comments what you liked most about this story. Our team will be very grateful to you. You can find even more fascinating stories on our channel. See you in the next video.